好，好，欢迎大家来一起研究这个《无量寿经》。今天我们会讲到第30这个大愿，48愿的这个30愿，所以欢迎大家一起来。今天是10号对吗？
对，12月10号。
12月10号，7点半在伯克利这边来跟大家一起研究《无量寿经》。好。
So welcome everyone. Amitofo. Today is December 10th, 2020. We'll begin our Infinite Life Sutra lecture. We'll be talking about vow number 30 today. But we'll begin with our Dharma request, which you just see in the chat box. And we also have our layman here who will be doing the request. So anytime you're ready, Amitofo. So Paul, anytime you're ready, you can start.
Okay, yeah.
Teach us how to live suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo Sadanto Sujeto Ye Arahati Samya Sambuddhoje.无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it, and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. All Buddhas and Bodhisattva, Venerable Master, all good and wise friends online, Amitofo, welcome to our Infinite Life Sutra. lecture. We will be investigating vow number 30 today. Before we begin, we will start with reciting the Buddha's name. 所以我们今天我们要讲那个第30阿弥陀佛第30个愿。那我们先开始来念佛，先开始念佛。
好。
So okay. 南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛，南无阿弥陀佛。
今天的这个页数是在30，好 ，OK， 38跟39。
On page 38 and 39 in the sutra text.
Yeah. 30愿啊，跟29愿都是在讲这个智慧辩才，所以我们可以再念一下29跟30，我们一起来念29跟30。
So vows number 29 and 30 are connected with the wisdom and eloquence, and so we can read those two together.
OK， 好，我们从29念到30。好
We'll read from vow number 29.
好。
So on page 38, you'll see number 29 in the Chinese side. Okay.
好，29，
设我得佛，果中菩萨，
若受读经法，
逢诵持说，而不得辩才智慧者，不取正觉。30，设我得佛，果中菩萨，智慧辩才，若可限量者，不取正觉。
好，英文。
So page 39, number 29 and 30. 29. When I become a Buddha, if the bodhisattvas in my land do not develop eloquence and wisdom by reciting, upholding, and expounding the sutras, I will not realize perfect awakening. Number 30. When I become a Buddha, if the wisdom and eloquence of the bodhisattvas in my land have limits, I will not realize perfect awakening.
好，我们这个今天就重点就是在智慧辩才没有限量，有限量的话，它就不成佛。所以这个是第30大愿。
So this is vow number 30. If he doesn't realize this vow, then he will not realize Buddhahood.
所以这个30大愿的这个受我多佛，就是说我法藏比丘能够得到成佛的这个极乐国国中菩萨，那时候的极乐国的菩萨们的这个智慧辩才，那就是他们菩萨的这些智慧辩才呢，若可限量者，就是说它是没有限量。假如说有限量的话，就不起正觉。
So here, Bhikshu Dharma Treasury is saying that the bodhisattvas in his land, in the future, if they should have wisdom and eloquence that has any limitations, meaning if they do not have limitless wisdom and eloquence, then he will not realize perfect awakening.
所以我们在这个《阿弥陀经》里面呢，里面有提到，就是尔时佛告长老舍利弗，从事西方过10万亿佛土，有世界名曰极乐，其土有佛号阿弥陀，现在正在说法。所以他这个就是说极乐国阿弥陀佛，他都是在说法，尽量都是你看他已经成佛10劫了，现在都是还在说法。
So in the Amitabha Sutra, Shakyamuni Buddha tells Venerable Shariputra that in a land hundreds, thousands of 10万亿佛土 100,000 kotis of lands, Buddha lands to the west, there's a land called Ultimate Bliss. And in that land, there's a Buddha named Amitabha who right now is teaching the Dharma. So you see, even though the Buddha has already become a Buddha for 10 eons, he is still teaching the Dharma.
他这个为什么就是他一直在说法，就是说要给他的人民，当然包括菩萨们，都给他们来灌输智慧，就是来给他们增长智慧的，有智慧以后，你就可以得到这个辩才。所以这个，因为佛的智慧它是无量无边的，那当然菩萨们他们能够得到这个智慧，也是一样是可以得到无量无边，所以不会有限量的。
So he's speaking the Dharma because he wishes that those people in his land, those bodhisattvas, all will increase in their wisdom. And when their wisdom increases, they will have more eloquence. So these bodhisattvas want to have the bodhisattvas have limitless and boundless wisdom.
而且极乐世界它那边的这个环境特别好，不会像我们这边娑婆世界，都是很多贪嗔痴，那边都是人民都是有大善知识聚会在一起，然后这个你看它这个鸟飞来飞去，各种鸟飞来飞去，也是都是在说法，还有这个树木也都是在说法，它都可以说法的，所以那边这个任何时间，都是在念佛、念法、念真。
So, in the Pure Land of Amitabha Buddha, it's a very good environment to cultivate in. It's not like our world where people have so much greed, hatred, and delusion. There in Amitabha's land, people are free of the three poisons. And even the birds speak Dharma. They make noise and they fly around, and their sounds, they actually teach us the Dharma. The trees are the same way. The trees have an ability to teach. And so any time at any moment in the Pure Land is a chance to be mindful of the Buddha, mindful of the Dharma, mindful of the Sangha, to cultivate.
所以这个释迦牟尼佛，他就是在印度那边来出生成佛，然后建立这个开始五比丘这个僧团以后呢，他就是僧团成立以后，他就开始来说法，所以每次说法我们都会看到经文里面。什么1250年纪的这个大阿罗汉在一起，都是在这个听这个释迦牟尼佛来说法。
So back in the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, he would go out and travel, and 1,250 monks would accompany him, and he would speak Dharma wherever he went.
所以这个我们都知道，这个人生难得，佛法难闻啊。然后这个何况刚好有碰到这个释迦牟尼佛，就是这个佛陀来直接说法，这个是非常珍贵的。这个真的是能够有这个机会来听法，真是非常难得。人生来一生的这个时间，有这个听佛法来说法。
So it is very rare or difficult to have the human rebirth, to be born as a human, and even more difficult to be able to meet the Buddha Dharma. So we are very fortunate to be able to learn the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, teaching us about the Pure Land, that we can have the opportunity to study and learn the Dharma. That's truly precious.
所以他们每次这个法会听完以后，当然这个法会中不只是佛的弟子、大菩萨大阿罗汉这个弟子，还有菩萨，当然还有其他的这个一切的这个众生，他们听完以后都你看我们的经典都说闻佛所说。欢喜信受，作礼而去。这个就是说，听完法以后，大家都是受益良多，然后法喜充满，所以就是这个佛来传授这个智慧给一切的这个人民众生。
So in the Dharma assemblies of the Buddha, he has many disciples, arhats, bodhisattvas. And many other beings. And he teaches them the Dharma. And if we look at the sutra text, it talks about how at the end, they, I don't know if I remember the English, they humbly receive it, they put it into practice, they're very joyful, and they take their leave, right? And so that's the spirit of basically learning the Dharma, requesting and being very joyful in learning the Dharma.
我们也常常听古德在说，佛法无人说，虽会不能了，已如木有一，不见净妙色。这个就是说，佛法虽然很好，假如说没有人来说的话，他这个智慧的话，那这个智慧就不能够能够得到，能够了这个智慧。就好像一个人啊，他眼睛里面有病，他不能够看到这个真正的这个非常美妙庄严的这个颜色。
So the sages say that the Buddha Dharma is the Buddha Dharma is uzento. If no one speaks the Dharma, then who can learn this profound wisdom? It's like somebody who has disease in their eyes, who cannot see wondrous colors.
所以这个 OK， 所以这个说法还有佛法，这个都是非常重要的。这个算智慧一个前言，就是说我们能够得到这个智慧是非常珍贵的。
So to be able to speak the Dharma and learn the Dharma is very important. This is the preliminary steps to develop wisdom.
像这个智慧啊，就是我们讲在英文是什么
Wisdom?
Jnana,
Jnana. Jnana is knowledge, oftentimes spiritual knowledge. Jnana.
Bozo Prajna.
Prajna.
Yeah.
Prajna is often translated as wisdom.
这个是什么梵语的？
梵语对 Sanskrit.
这个是
Jnana and Prajna.
这个就是
这是大藏经里面的。
对。
Wow, they have English with diacritics in the Tripitaka.
然后他也解释另外说，这个截断就是说能够有智慧来截断，这个就是一个智慧。然后能够选择，然后非常能够简要的来，这个就是有智慧，这个就是他来解释智慧的意思。
So the meaning of wisdom is 决断就是完全断掉啊。
不是，就是他能够有知识来决定，然后来做不好的，你就要断对，没有错。
So he's basically the ability to discern and then be clear about what they want to put down. And also there's
选择就是选择啦，选择
they
就
also
是
can
有知识智慧来选择。
they use wisdom to make decisions.
还有另外，他有讲说，你知道这个速地就是熟地啊，就是一般我们速就是那个市面上的这个熟的这个真谛的话，就是一种智，然后能够了解这个真谛的话，就是慧，有这个慧就能够了解真谛。
So being able to understand principles kind of in the world, that's knowledge. If you really can see things to their essential nature, their true, not maybe essential, their true, the truth of things, what's actually there, that's wisdom.
Yeah. 还有这个他这个还有常常会讲智慧山，就是说智慧像山一样的高。所以这个《涅盘经》里面呢，他讲这个是指如来，他能够习断，就是如来都全部断掉这个无量的这烦恼，他就会住这个智慧山。这个是一个比喻啦。
So they sometimes make an analogy that wisdom is like a mountain, and that the Buddha can cut away all the afflictions and then lives on the mountain of wisdom.
又还有说这个智慧水，这个智慧啊，它能够来冲洗我们的烦恼，就是烦恼的一些污垢啊，能够冲洗掉，这个就是比喻用智慧水的一个比喻。那文殊师利问经里面呢，我们的心性本来都是本净的。那诸过为垢，就是说我们会做很多的过错，这个是一个污垢。然后我们可以用智慧水来洗除我们的心垢，这个就是我们要得到这个智慧的这个重要的。
So they also say that wisdom is like water. That you can wash away our afflictions and difficulties. So in the sutra that talks about Manjushri Bodhisattva's questions, it talks about how our nature is pure, but we do actions that are confused and cover over our nature. So you can use the pure water of wisdom to wash away all those afflictions, all those coverings.
而且也是在这个这个经典里面也有讲，阿罗汉呢，他有四智，有四种的智慧，他悟出这个四谛，然后最后证阿罗汉，所以他这个阿罗汉果，阿罗汉得到这个以后，他都会说：我身已尽，梵恨已立，所作已办，不受后有。这样子一个寄送，我们都是可以，常在这个佛经上可以读到的。
So in the sutras, it talks about the arhats having 4 kinds of wisdom. They also have mastered the 4 noble truths. They have deeply penetrated into them. And when they truly become awake, they make a statement saying, this is my last birth. I've seen the... I've done what the spiritual path. I've kind of reached the culmination of the spiritual path. I've done what needs to be done, and I won't need to be kind of reborn, come back into existence. They're complete. This is my last rebirth.
Yeah， 所以这个就是我身已尽呢，就刚才讲的这个就是苦地的一个智慧。梵恨已立呢，这个是昧地的智慧；那所作已办呢，就是道地的智慧；不受后有呢，就是极地的智慧。所以这个阿罗汉他有4个智慧。
So the 4 types of wisdom here,
古籍没到。
it's the 4 noble truths matched up. So, 我身, yeah, it's very interesting. If you look at the Theravada suttas, especially you'll see at the end of them, they often have that. This is my last rebirth. I've lived the spiritual life to its culmination. I do not, I won't come back into existence. So it actually matches up with the 4 noble truths. So, 我身已尽者, this is my last birth, is actually connected with the suffering, the wisdom that comes from the first noble truth of suffering. The second one, which talks about that they've completed the spiritual path, the brahmacharya, they lived the brahmacharya to its completion, is the wisdom of the 灭地, so 第三个, is the 3rd noble truth of cessation, the wisdom of that. So then they've lived the spiritual life to completion. Then 做已办者, so I've done what's supposed to be done. That's the way, the wisdom that comes from cultivating the 4th of the noble truths. And finally, 不受后有, I won't have further existence. That's the 2nd noble truth of accumulation, or the source of suffering comes from craving.
好
Very interesting.
Yeah, 这个就是在讲这个智慧，而且呢，在其实刚才讲的这个罗汉的4个智慧，现在我们再来研究一下如来，他也有4个智慧。
我可以这样解释一下这个，我想I think it might be helpful to have a kind of a practical application of this, so people can see that how this would work in your own life. So maybe to begin, Jing Forsher made a distinction between 智跟慧, sometimes translated as knowledge and wisdom. And so knowledge, jnana, is a kind of understanding of things. So right now, for instance, we're going down to Redwood Vihara to do a lot of work to build a retaining wall, erosion control, many different things to take care of the land after the fires. And so knowledge is knowing what to do, right? You know how to clear the land so that you can put the concrete blocks, and how you stack them, how you make sure it's straight, how you make sure everything works out well to protect the land, to make sure the weight of the soil won't knock it over, right? You know how to cover the ground with hay or mulch or something to prevent the rain from washing away the soil. So there's lots of things in terms of worldly knowledge that we need in our lives to do anything. If you have your job, you have things that you need to know to be able to do a good job. So that's knowledge. Now wisdom, 慧, is the ability to see into the depths of each of these activities that there, you would say, usually the markers are suffering, impermanent, and not self. That we don't attach to them. So if we apply it maybe to the retaining wall, right? So as we do the work, although we do the best work we can, we don't attach to the work and say the wall has to be a certain way, or if it gets knocked over during the winter time, then I'm really going to get upset because that's not supposed to happen. No, the wisdom sees, this is a wall, and at one point the wall will fall down. It's impermanent. There's no need to get too attached to it. Although I can do the best job I can, I don't have to attach, right? And so that's where the wisdom comes in. So you could say knowledge and wisdom work hand in hand. The more we can see clearly with wisdom and not attach, oftentimes it opens us to be able to learn more principles, to learn how to do things better. And as we learn how to do things better, we are able to also develop our wisdom because our mind expands rather than getting very narrow and just seeing a tiny bit of something. So these work hand in hand. So it's knowledge and wisdom, jnana and prajna. Jnana in Sanskrit means to know. 所以我刚刚就是短短的翻译，就是说，我们智慧呢，智就是 jnana，然后慧呢就是 prajna。然后如果你用一个一般生活上的一个比喻，我想我们刚刚现在去那个红木禅林，在我们的南部的，在刚刚火灾，所以我们在修理。所以比方说我们盖那个 retaining wall 是中文怎么说 ？retaining wall。retaining wall。retaining wall 就是有土要掉下来时，你要做一个墙壁。
就是土墙吧。
土墙。对，一个土墙。来挡住那个山会来倒下来，用这个 concrete 啊，用石头啊来挡住。所以这个有一个法，我看我是完全这方面是说 ignorant，
就是不
知道，我不了解，我是完全不了解。经纬师也不是很了解，我们在学习，但是需要一个把地弄平啊，然后要把都做很直啊，然后怎么把它弄够强啊，不会把那个土会来倒啊，这就是一般生活上的这些道理。这个就是 jnana， 就是智，我们的理解世界上的这个道理。
这个是熟地。对，
熟地。刚刚那个金佛师讲是个熟地，所以这个就是我们用在生活上需要的。比方说你在工作上是做电脑的，你需要知道怎么用电脑。如果你是做那个还有什么做餐馆的，你要知道怎么煮饭啊，对不对？不会做就做不成啊。这个就是我们这个智，这个 jnana。但是这个慧呢，这什么？慧就是可以看通、看透地，就是不执着。比方说，我刚刚想讲要我们盖这个墙壁，但是盖这个墙壁呢，如果我有这样的念头，说我做这个墙壁不能倒，是完全不能倒的，这个一定要永远的，这个就不是慧了。因为慧是知道有无常，慧知道是一切都无常，不要执着。所以虽然我们做盖这个墙壁要盖得很好，就是用我们花最好的努力来做成，但是我们不要执着，一定要怎么样，一定要真的怎么样，这个就不是慧了。如果我们心呢变很硬，一定要有一个方式，这个就不是慧了，就变成无明了。所以我们这个智慧呢，这两部分都要一起配合。我们要有知识呢，知道怎么做事情，但是慧呢，让我们不要执着， 但是我们做事情可以做得很愉快，跟做得很圆满，两边都来互持帮忙，这个是非常重要的。So the other thing maybe I'd say very briefly is Jing Fosher talked about the Four Noble Truths. And I think that's a very important teaching because that teaches us how to get free of suffering in our lives. And so this, I would say, is one of the hallmark teachings of the Buddha. They taught over and over again, is saying, in our lives, we go through suffering, we go through difficulty. So let me teach you how to get free. And there's a wisdom here, right? When we look at suffering, we truly understand suffering for what it is. If we have a difficult emotion, let's say anger, we don't just run away from our anger. In fact, we actually understand our anger. I'm angry because, let's say for instance, I really care about my family and I don't want my family to get hurt, and so I'm getting angry at somebody that I feel is potentially hurting my family, hurting what I care about, hurting, whatever we wish. And there's a kind of hurting my pride sometimes, right? So we get angry. And that's an understanding. It's understanding. But then this next move in the Four Noble Truths is saying, rather than getting so caught up on the external things, is to say, where is that suffering coming from? And oftentimes it's coming from inside. The Buddha says that the origin of suffering comes from craving, from a lacking, from a tightening and attachment to things needing to be a certain way, needing to be in control. And that's where our suffering comes from. So that's very interesting. So my anger, although somebody else can maybe be a trigger for it, but ultimately I'm responsible. It's because of my expectations, my attachments, the way I'm seeing things causes me to become angry. And I see it myself. If I'm having a difficult day, my body's tired, or I have a headache or something, I'm very irritable. Something happens and somebody's reciting too slowly or reciting too fast, or walking too this or that, I can start getting a little bit impatient, right? That's because of my own attachments and afflictions that causes my suffering. The last two noble truths are the Buddha's antidote. So he first says that suffering can end, and that there's a way out of suffering, which is cultivating a life of virtue, precepts we say sometimes, samadhi, kind of meditative stillness, or reciting the Buddha's name is wonderful, and developing wisdom, like what we're doing right now together, is to study the Buddha's sutras to better understand what is wisdom so we can apply it in our lives. So that's the second piece. 可能简单的讲到就够了。就是说四圣谛也是很重要的一个智慧。怎么说呢？我们
最基本的。
最基本的。但是很多时候我们不知道怎么来用。所以比方说我们苦谛是说我们痛苦的时候怎么有智慧呢？因为我们来研究这个苦可以有智慧。比方说如果我有这个生气，我烦恼是很容易生气，但是我可以把这个生气怎么说压住，不看，说我没有生气啊，这个就不是智慧了。生气的智慧就是怎么说？我去真正去研究，我这个生气是哪里来的？我这样生气是什么原因？可能是因为我很想要照顾啊，或者护持我的家庭啊，或者我的自己的我相啊，我的个性啊等等，我是这样子的。然后第二个那个圣谛是什么呢？就是说这个苦是从哪里来的？这个苦是从我自己来的。外面可以来引起，但是我真正的可以说苦呢，从我的欲望来的，我的这个控制心因为一个方式来的，我的无明来的，无明执着来的。所以这个佛陀把我们的可以说来观我们的苦是从看到我们心中怎么来产生这个苦。第三个跟第四个圣谛呢，就是讲怎么来把这个苦可以解决，我们不用再生病了。他就说，我们要怎么来生病好呢？就是要修戒定慧，把一个生活当中 生活一个好好的生活，不要伤害自己，伤害别人，然后好好念佛啊，把心静下来，最后来有智慧，有智慧就可以，这个生命就变成很，怎么说平等就是很安定啊，平安，说平安，对，这样子说平安。好
，OK， 好，然后佛就是佛也有如来啊，如来就是佛嘛，他也有四智，所以我们都知道，第一个就是大圆净智，大圆净智，因为他知道凡夫有八识，所以这个如来他可以转成这个大圆净智，从八识里面可以转到这个八识转成这个大圆净智。
So the Buddha also has 4 types of wisdom. The first one is the great mirror wisdom. And this great mirror wisdom comes from, if people are familiar with the Yogacara teachings, it's the 8th consciousness. The 8th consciousness, when transformed, becomes this great mirror wisdom.
第二个就是平等性质，平等，它这个平等性质，它是转就是七识，我们每一个人有七识，它可以把这个七识呢转成平等，都达到平等的这个理上，所以就他可以起无缘大悲的这个智慧，无缘大悲。
So the second type of wisdom is a kind of a wisdom that is
平等性质。
平等性质, it'd be kind of being impartial. Maybe I say that. Sometimes use also equanimity, but being impartial, a kind of impartial wisdom, having no favorites, right? Completely no biases, free of prejudice. So this is a transformation of our 7th consciousness. And actually this is quite interesting because the 7th consciousness is usually associated with our sense of self. That if you imagine, maybe after Jing Fosher explains, I can explain how the 8 consciousnesses work. But yeah. So the transformation of our 7th consciousness becomes a kind of free from prejudice, a kind of impartial knowledge.
好，第三个就是佛他具有妙观察智，这个妙观察智就是能够转第六识，就是我们一般人的第六识啊，我们六识的眼耳鼻舌身意嘛，六识，然后他可以用这个来观察这个诸法的这个形象来说法。来断这个疑惑的这个智慧，所以他而且能够转，能够知道这个，所以他具有妙观察智。
So the third type of wisdom is wondrous observing wisdom, and this one is the transformation of our 6 consciousnesses: is eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Each one has a consciousness associated with it, and when they all get transformed together, they become a wonderful observing wisdom. They're able to observe all dharmas, the marks of all dharmas.
好，第四个，所以佛有的4个，第4个就是成所作智，就是转眼等的这个五识，眼耳鼻舌身，这个五识啊，就是说我们这个人的这个五识来所以它变成种种的这个智慧，所以变成它能够如来的这个成它的一个化身，还有各种神通，这个的一个智慧的作用。
So actually I made a mistake. So the wonderful observing wisdom is just a transformation of the 6th consciousness. So it doesn't include eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. It's just eye, ears, nose, tongue, and body. It's just the mind, consciousness of the mind. So this becomes wonderful observing wisdom. But the 4th wisdom is the the wisdom that kind of is able to accomplish 成所作, accomplish what it sets out to do. And this is a transformation of the 5 consciousnesses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body. And this is, for instance, like the Buddha's spiritual powers and various things they're able to manifest to engage the world of causes and conditions.
好，然后菩萨也有5智，菩萨。
我这个可能解释一下下。Okay, so let me also make this a little bit more concrete. So if people are not familiar with the Yogacara teachings of the 8 consciousness theory, I would recommend it. If you're interested in Buddhist psychology, this is probably the most thorough analysis of the Buddha's teachings on the mind and how do you purify the mind to become a Buddha. And it's given in great detail. And the basic structure of it is the Buddha gives, or the Yogacara tradition, the commentary tradition gives, is called the 8 consciousnesses. And so the first 5 consciousnesses are eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. Those are 5, right? The 6th consciousness is the mind. The 7th consciousness is where we have our sense of self. And the 8th consciousness is called the alaya vijnana, the storehouse consciousness, where we store all our karmic seeds. It's likened to a field. And there we plant all our karmic seeds, and then when the time is right, those seeds come out. And so normally, if we're using our 8 consciousness in the kind of normal way, and not wisdom, we end up, let's say, we are, I use the word kind of anger. Right? So we get angry at somebody, and so we use our 5 consciousness to do so. Right? We use our eyes, we see them. We use our, hope we don't hit them with our body. But we use our, let's just say, we use our eyes to see them, and we use our ears to hear them. Then our 6th consciousness processes that, thinks about it. Oh, gosh, they said that to me? I'm going to get even, right? The 6th consciousness. And the me is the 7th consciousness. And then the 8th consciousness is all the memories I have of that person from the past, and how they've wronged me, and how what they're saying is inappropriate, and so I'm going to get even. And as I'm doing all these thoughts, and then I might say something that's mean to that person, then that plants a karmic seed in my 8th consciousness, which keeps me in a habitual cycle of this kind of relationship with that person, or this conflictual relationship. So not free at all. And so the Buddha uses this system to really analyze the mind. Now if we turn it around so that rather than having just consciousness that often is confused, we want to have wisdom. So rather than that, our 5 consciousnesses is, when it's wisdom, is able to engage whatever is out there in the world, but be completely free. It's not being limited by our past karmic patterns. And so you see the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who have profound wisdom, they're able to use their 5 consciousnesses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, to do things that we would consider miraculous, right? Their spiritual powers are miraculous. We hear stories of Guanyin Bodhisattva being able to save people who are in a fire, or on a boat, or falling through empty space, right? She's able to somehow lend out a hand and just catch them, and or take care of them so that they recover. And that's because he or she is able to cultivate their wisdom to a profound level, so that they're able to use their 5 consciousnesses in a way that is not limited by our ordinary mind. Then this next level up is this wondrous observing wisdom, is when our 6 consciousness is no longer so trapped in our thought patterns. We use the word false thinking, right, of greed, hatred, and delusion. It gets liberated. So the thoughts are penetrating. It's a wonderful observing wisdom that sees very, very clearly. And I think the 7th consciousness is also very interesting, because it's something I think we can experience all the time. right? What do we pay attention to is what's important to us. And this is actually an interesting reflection to see that how little of the world do we actually pay attention to. So much is going on all the time. But what do we really pay attention to is what we think is interesting, right? What maybe will harm us, maybe will have some benefit, somehow interesting to us, right? It fits into our story about who we are. That's the seventh consciousness. So it limits what we actually see. It's kind of prejudiced, right? Prejudice to ourselves or ideology. But now when it becomes wisdom, it becomes impartial, not limited in that way anymore of kind of seeing things only from my perspective. It becomes this ability to see everything equally. So that's what the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have. Maybe not all Bodhisattvas, but very high level Bodhisattvas. They can have this kind of level and equal wisdom. And finally, this great mirror wisdom, which is transforming the eighth consciousness, which I said before was where we plant our karmic seeds. Our karmic seeds are all purified. We're no longer caught in a situation where we're coming from our habitual patterns in the past. Rather, we're like a mirror. So whatever comes from the mirror, that's what's being reflected. Right? A really good mirror just reflects what's there. It's not adding to the person. Right? If we have a mirror and it's covered with people brushing their teeth and it's got toothpaste on it, or it's got steam on it, so you can't really see very clearly. Not a very good mirror, right? It's all kind of distorted, unclear. But once we clean it all off, all our habitual patterns that are limiting our experience, then we see very, very clearly. That's the great mirror wisdom. So I really have to translate it in Chinese, which is being difficult for me. 所以我们这个八识呢，如果是瑜伽世谛论嘛，不是瑜伽唯识，他们讲的这个八识讲得很详细，就是说这个五识呢变成这个什么智慧？五识就变成哪个智慧？叫中文怎么翻译？五识变成 OK。成所作智。成所作智，所以你要做的事情都可以成功。所以我们很多时候我们做的事情不成功，因为我们很执着，我们用我们的无明被障碍了，所以我们这个可以把我们的五根呢，眼耳鼻舌身，可以来感化，变成我们用的时候很圆满，像菩萨佛都可以有神通妙用。然后呢，这个我们六识呢常常在打妄想，反而不打妄想了，就可以来关照事情，很清楚的来理解。这个我们的妄想呢，就变成一个可以透过事情的这个方式来观察，这个就变成我们的六识对
妙观察
改变。然后呢，第七识呢，就是我们的我相，就在第七识。常常我们看事情的时候，不是看完全圆满，因为我们的心被我们的看法被限制了到我们的我着，对不对？
产生不平等了，
所以变成不平等了。这叫平等性，就是没有我爱的，我不爱的，没有我喜欢我不喜欢，就是变成很没有偏心。看事情是看很平等，对人都平等，看事情都很平等。
所以这个是很重要。你跟他看一个蚂蚁，它也有佛性，你不可以，就是随便的那个还有蚊子啊，一下把它打死。
对，
这个都是不平等，
这不平等，因为这个蚂蚁在打扰我，对不对？不然我要就杀了，这样就不平等了。因为看这个蚂蚁跟我都是有佛性啊，为什么我会把我自己的欲望变成
加在这个他们身上？
对，加在他身上
就不平等，
就不平等了。对啊，很好的这个例子。然后这个最后呢是这个叫什么？
转八识，
转八识叫大圆净智， 转八识呢？我们八识里面都是我们的以前所做的事情，我们的怎么karmic seeds 业的种子，我们的以前做的事情啊，我们现在做的事情都种在我们的八识里面。但是佛陀有个特能，他把他的八识完全都清净了，他没有 he doesn't have any residual habitual patterns， 他的这个习气毛病呢都完全都解脱了，所以他看事情他就是像个镜子一样，一个镜子你在前面就很清楚照的就是跟这个事情是一模一样的。不好的镜子呢怎么样呢？是有人可能刷牙，然后他们的刷牙的镜子就变成有什么东西在上面啊，或者有那个 steam 啊，你要洗澡就有这个那个镜子呢就被挡住了，看不清楚。所以这个就是我们的
污点啊。然后它这个最重要这个第八识大圆镜智啊，它会转成一个功德，就是成就这个佛的功德。这个是最重要的。
So Jifu saying that what's really important is that when you turn the wisdom, especially let's say the wisdom of the great mirror wisdom, then this is a virtue of the Buddha, virtue of the Buddha. 所以最后就是说，你看，就变成这个智慧呢，就是看事情就看完全很清楚，然后别人看他们自己在你的眼光前面也看自己的很清楚，对不对？有些人你在跟他们讲话你讲完话就我可以比较理解我自己，理解这个事情。有些人你在跟他们讲话，你讲完话心就更乱了，对不对？所以这个就是这个智慧像个镜子一样。Just want to give you people some kind of practical examples of how these wisdoms work, because they actually are worth exploring in your own lives. We're here learning the Dharma, and what we're trying to cultivate doesn't mean we have to be, at the perfect wisdom of the Buddha, right? We're not going to have great mirror wisdom at its most perfect level. However, we can aspire to it and work little bit by little bit in that direction. Can I let go of my bad habits? Can I let go of my selfish thoughts? Can I do things in a way that's not attached? Right? Can I use my thoughts in a way that are penetrating into the nature of things rather than just getting distracted at the superficial level? Right? That's what we're hoping, is to take these principles and actually apply it in our lives, so we ourselves can develop real wisdom. 就是想我们这样子来理解，就是可以真正把这个智慧用在我们自己的生活当中。虽然可以说佛他们的智慧是非常广大的，但我们也有部分我们不用小看自己，就是一步一步来学习这个智慧，我们就到时间到了，我们就有这个智慧了。
也好，有事吗
？I see. I'm not quite sure what the explanation of the question is here. It says, what is a good resource to learn about this?
Oh, okay.
So maybe you can say what the this is that you're referring to.
这个其实这个智慧呢，有很多的，像菩萨有五智啊，还有这个还有十智啊，这个10种智慧啊。这个大乘的10种智慧，还有小乘的，这个大家都可以做功课。因为时间的关系，所以我想本来是要多讲一点，我看不讲了。我想大家可以来做功课。它有5智、8智、10智啊，更多的20智。
20智
都有这个可以在经典上可以查到。
So you have 5 types of bodhisattva, 5 types of wisdom, 10 types of wisdom, 20 types of wisdom. There's many types of wisdom. 你要讲菩萨的字吗？你不要讲菩萨的字。
刚才我讲出来好了。
好，讲出来比较好。我们有5个字。
第一个就是菩萨，他能够通达智，有这个通达智，他能够觉醒，因为是菩萨是觉有情嘛，他能够觉醒而能够通达知法的这个智慧，这个就是通达智。
我不理解通达就是理解事情啊。
就是通达知法的智慧，通达智。
So ability, I would say maybe to have a penetrating understanding a wisdom of penetrating understanding. So they're able to wake up to the dream of this world and understand the true nature of the dharmas, all dharmas.
好，第二个就是随念智，他能够忆持过去的事情，而且不忘这个他不会忘记的这个智慧，他就是能够依持他，所以他有随念智。
So somebody help with the word penetrating wisdom. So the penetrating wisdom. So I've said that about. The second one is a 随念智。
随着这个心念呢
So ability to follow the mind.
就是说他知道过去的事。
So they're able to understand what has happened in the past, and they don't forget what's going on right now. They have, you could say, perfect memory. So like a kind of a wisdom of constant mindfulness, of constant memory.
还有第三个就是安立智，他能够建立正行啊，就是他正法来修行，他有这个来去正法修行的这个智慧，他能够安立在这个正法修行的智慧，这安立智。
So they're able to establish themselves, a wisdom of establishing themselves. So they're able to establish themselves on the proper dharma to be able to practice and skillfully.
好，第四个就和智，它观一切法都是随缘和的，就是因缘和，因缘来了就有，因缘走了就没有，所以它可以观察一切法随缘和的智慧。
So he can also have the wisdom that is kind of seeing how things come together. So he sees how all dharmas come together from various causes and conditions.
好，第五个就是如意智，就是能够随他的这个意识，他所想要的，而且他无不满足，他都是非常满足的，不贪心的。他这个就是随他的意识来，他无不满足的这个智慧。
So he has a wisdom that's also everything according to their wishes, as you wish. So they're whatever they wish, they can receive. So you are and they're never discontent. They're always content. This kind of wisdom.
Yeah.
And that one's interesting because I don't know if it's I don't think you could say it's a trick, but it's an interesting principle at least that we often see in the Buddhist texts about having this idea of as you wish, having things always as you wish, and people cultivate with that wish, right? I want to come to the Buddha hall and bow because I hope that, my family will be peaceful, I'll make a lot of money, and that's kind of as you wish on one level. But there's a more profound level of as you wish, is that your wishes are actually very, very simple, and so everything goes as you wish because you're always content. Right, and so rather than the as you wish being externally oriented and getting what you want, you actually let go of the need and want for anything, and so you always get what you want every moment because you're always happy. Right, that's I always thought a nice, interesting part about the Dharma. 所以刚刚说这个如意的这个智慧呢，我觉得蛮有意思的。你看佛法里面，可以从外边来看，也可以从里面来看。外面来看的时候，有人来拜佛啊，或者来烧香啊，可能是希望家里和平啊，有长寿啊，可能公司成功啊，等等等等。但是，你要再深一点来看，这个如意呢，是如果我们把我们的欲望完全放下，对我们一切的想要的东西都已经达到了，完全都是满足的，因为我们的欲望已经放下了。我想这个是更深的一个理解来说这个如意的法，如意的智慧。对。
OK， 好，因为今天晚上的这个第三实验呢，它智慧辩才，所以我们也讲不可限量，我们也可以来谈一下这个辩才。上个礼拜我们讲的就是我们那个辩才是那个 舍利佛的就是他佛陀都称赞他是辩才第一的。然后这个其实啊，我们有注意到这个怎样子来得到这个辩才呢？这个其实我们诵持大悲咒就有了。所以这个大悲咒陀尼经里面，仙公上人讲的这个法里面，其实这个经文里面就有讲，讲这样子：诵持大悲神咒者，若不得无量三昧辩才者，我是不成正觉。所以就是说，我们都一天到晚在诵持这个大悲咒，我们就是非常幸运。有这样的一个法门，我们就是来诵持，那我们最后就是可以得到辩才三昧的。所以这个是非常其实很容易，只要跟着佛法来学习就可以了呀。
So eloquence. Let's talk about eloquence. But maybe before that, somebody's asked about a good resource to learn about Yogacara Buddhism. It's true. If it's in English, I have found a couple of books. One book is called Living Yogacara. It's translated from a Japanese monk who is, or maybe it's a priest, who talks about Yogacara, and I find it to be fairly accessible if you haven't studied Yogacara before. And so if you want, you can go through that book. There's a discussion at the very end around do we have a Buddha nature or not, which I think you can read it just for your own interest because it goes through all the various debates about it. But I think we don't have to spend that much time on it because, at least in our tradition, it's pretty, people believe pretty deeply that we have a Buddha nature, that the potential for awakening. So you can take a look. That's called Living Yogacara. There's a more difficult book to read called Demonstration of Consciousness Only. And you'll find that in a book by Numata. They've translated three texts on consciousness only, maybe, and you can find that on the web as well. And they might have a PDF available, and you can take a look at that. That was a lot more technical and more difficult to understand. If you're seriously interested, there's I don't know if Doug Powers, our one of the professors at the RBU, is still explaining it. But he would explain in great detail the Yogacara system and how it applies to modern situations. So if you're interested, you can look there. So 这个唯识的这个资料呢，我在英文的有一些，就是一本书叫《Living Yogacara》，另外也有这个唯识论翻译成英文的。然后如果你真的想去研究，我知道我们的法界大学的教授 Doug Powers 果雷居士。他很多时候会讲这个唯识的道理来解释佛法。
Okay.
Okay, and then so Jing Forsher, I'm not sure if I translated this part yet, about the eloquence. So the eloquence is, you can see Shariputra's uncle was foremost in eloquence. And so for us, how do we want to cultivate eloquence? Well, in our text we talk about reciting the Great Compassion Mantra. In the Great Compassion and Repentance, we see a certain line from Guan Bodhisattva saying, those who recite the Great Compassion Mantra will attain great eloquence. 刚才说什么？观音菩萨怎么样？
就是他这个经文。
三昧, so samadhi and limitless samadhi and eloquence, then she will not realize perfect awakening. So similarly to Amitabha Buddha, she makes a vow. Those who uphold the Great Compassion Mantra, which we know many people do throughout the day, then the people will have limitless samadhi and eloquence.
所以仙公上人特别提到这个，你诵持这个大悲咒啊，第一个你不可以有不善的心啊。其实这个经典上也有讲，大悲陀罗尼唯除不善，除不自成。那仙公上人他特别讲明白，这个你不可以一边念啊，一边去害人杀人。 偷东西啊，然后去做邪淫啊、妄语啊、酒肉啊，这个都是不可以做，你做的话就没有功效，所以这个就是特别神功上人提出来。
So for the Great Compassion Mantra, the person who's holding it has to have a good heart and have virtue. You can't, Master Hua says, if you recite the Great Compassion Mantra, but you go out and kill, steal, lust, lie, and take intoxicants, and you hurt people, or you hurt yourself, then the Great Compassion Mantra won't have any effect. So the Great Compassion Mantra really works if we have virtue. We are, trying our best to be good people.
Yeah. 好，我们想今天来分享一个，就是说我们有讲了人生难得，然后佛法难闻，诸佛出现在这个世间也是很难的。这个在《法纪经》里面呢，第14品，这个第三篇，就是有一个故事，就是龙王还有他的女儿。
So, we look at a story from the Dhammapada, the verses of the Dhammapada, explaining how our life as a human is very precious and that our ability to learn the Dharma is also very rare. So in this Dhammapada verse, I think it's section number 14, or verse number 14, there's a story of a dragon king and his daughter.
Yeah. 为什么他就会变成龙王呢？他变成龙呢？他这个是在迦叶时代的时候呢，他是一个比丘，他后来他因为不够理智，他念念不忘过错的这个过去的这个错误呢，所以后来就变成龙。然后他后来当了龙以后，但是他有一位非常美丽的这个女儿。
So this Dragon King, what's his backstory? Well, during the time of the Buddha Kashyapa, he was a monk, but he didn't change his behavior. So 对不对？所以他没有改变他自己的这个出家众，一位比丘。
对他以前呢，
却不够理， doesn't have much understanding of principles, and then constantly 不忘犯过的错误，所以他一直想他的这些错误。He keeps thinking about all the mistakes that he made. So that's why he became a dragon. Kind of kept dwelling on his own mistakes, kind of constant regretful.
但是他有一个非常美丽的女儿。那他这个龙王呢，他就他可以化成这个人形啊。他有这个能力，所以他就化成人以后，他就一直公开说，假如有人能够回答我女儿的所提的问题，那你就可以娶她为妻。
So the Dragon King would take on a human form and let people know. Says if people can answer the questions of my daughter, then you can have her as your wife.
所以他就每个月的都有2次呢，这个他的女儿，他每个月有2次都化成这个人，然后到公众场所去唱歌跳舞啊，然后有人提出问题来跟他来答辩的话，但是都没有一个人得到这个正确的这个答案。
So he would go to the market, or the kind of a public place, and make this announcement. And so he would go twice a month and to a public place, and people would come, and then they would try to answer the questions. But whenever people try to answer the questions, they weren't able to do so.
所以有一天呢，这个佛陀他透过神通，他知道有一位这个年轻人叫做优塔罗的这个年轻人。他经过这些问题，经过这一次的去约会，就是跟那个解答以后呢，他可以正道出国，就是跟那个龙王女的这个来较量以后，他可以得到这个出国，所以 但是他这个犹塔罗就出发，然后准备去答他的问题。
So one time the Buddha saw this happening, and he saw that one of his monks, if he were to answer the Dragon King's daughter's questions, he would realize the first fruit of arhatship, a kind of Shotapana, stream winner. And so the Buddha told this monk to go out and to answer the Dragon King's daughter's questions.
所以这个年轻人他去的这个时候，佛陀也也把他告诉他这个问题的正确答案。所以这个犹塔罗年轻人听完佛陀的答案后，就是他们去跟龙女对阵了以后，来辩论，他都赢了，就是佛陀告诉他的答案。所以这个龙女这样子的目前的这个答案在后来讲出来了，所以他这个跟龙女的答案是下面有提出来。
So the young bhikshu went to the dragon girl and was able to answer her questions. So it worked out.
他第一个问谁是统治者？第一个就
So first question is 谁是统治者？
统治者就是孔子。
Who has able to total control?
Yeah.
然后
回答就是六根的人，能够掌握六根的人，就是我们言而比说，生意就是统治者。
So the response is the person who has ability to restrain their six senses, have control over their six senses, then they are one who is in total control.
然后这个德恨不足的人，可不可以称为统治者？那这个回答说，德恨缺陷的人不可以称为统治者，要毫无私心的人才可以称为统治者。
So it says, well, can somebody to be somebody who has 统治者？统治者。德恨不足, so a person who doesn't have enough virtue, can you call him somebody who is in total control, who is able to have complete control? The answer is no. Somebody who does not have virtue is not in control. You cannot say that they are someone who has total control. Only if the person does not have any selfishness in their hearts can you say that they have total control.
然后第三个，怎样子的这个统治者会没有德恨的缺陷？就是在访问怎样子一个统治者是会没有这个德恨的缺陷？然后答案是，毫无私心的统治者是没有德恨的缺陷。就是说，一样的，这跟第二题，就是说你不可以有私心，就是先公上人讲的。我们六道宗旨就是不自私不自利，他这个就是不自私。
So here the third question here is, for this person who has complete control, if they don't 没有德恨的缺陷
就是
怎么样的
统治者没有德恨的缺陷
So how is it that the person who has total control, complete control, doesn't have any limitations in their virtuous conduct? And it says, those 好护色心, those who have no selfishness in their hearts, then they can be one who has truly complete control. 没有德恨
没有私心的人就可以称为没有德恨上就是没有。
They don't have any kind of limitations because of their virtuous conduct.
Yeah. 还有第四个问题就是怎样子的人可以称为是愚痴的人？这个答案就是追求感官娱乐的人。就是说追求我们身体上 眼耳鼻舌身意这个感官娱乐，就是用这样子来娱乐的人呢，他就是称为是愚痴的人。
So somebody asked, and the fourth one is, how can somebody be called, what kind of person can be called ignorant or foolish? And the response is, somebody who are constantly chasing after their five senses, looking for happiness. That kind of person is kind of foolish.
所以他这个故事就是说，听完他们两个跟龙女里面对打的这个答案以后呢，这个龙王的女孩子呢，就是再继续来问这一些感官欲望的这个事情，邪见啊、无明啊，最后克服这个问题。这个年轻人呢，优达罗都照佛陀的教导，一一都跟他答了问题。
So after this exchange, so in these answers, the Dragon King, the 公主断读请问有，
就是其实这些问题全部都是他依照佛陀的方
So
式
he
来
used the
解答他。
Buddha's explanations to answer all the questions that was asked of him. He answered many more questions. It's one by one answered all the questions they had.
Yeah. 所以这个时候呢，这个龙王就知道他答的这一些，就知道这个佛陀已经出现在这个世间，所以就请这个年轻人由达罗带他去见这个龙王，就带他去见这个佛陀，然后他就向佛陀来顶礼，然后他讲出他自己成为这个龙的这个理由，这个缘由，所以就是佛陀同时也跟他解释，人生难得啊，这个佛陀难遇啊，佛法难闻啊，这样子。
So this Dragon King then knew that the Buddha was in the world, because only someone like that would have these kind of responses. So he went off to find the Buddha, paid his respect, and was able to learn from the Buddha. And the Buddha really described that here, having a human body is difficult to have. Being able to meet the Dharma is very difficult, and being able to hear the Dharma is also very difficult.
所以这个佛陀说完这个说完法以后呢，就是当时这个舍利佛尊者的一些弟子呢，他们都证到了这个阿罗汉国，然后这个大众里面有很多人也证到出国，这个就是一个最重要就是讲我们不要去被这个感官欲望，被我们的欲望所控制，而且这个你能够不这样子，你假如说在最重要也是没有私心，你没有自私自利的心，那你就没有什么缺陷，这样子的一个最重要佛陀来解答这个问题给大家来反省，所以这个是一个非常好的机会。同时我们现在也一样的听这个法，我们也是可以来得到自己反省这个机会。
So there, these after hearing this exchange, Shariputra had some of his disciples become arhats, and many in the assembly also became Shrotapanas, stream mentors. And so from this story, we can see how important it is not to be controlled by our senses, and also not to be selfish. This is a good place for us to reflect on ourselves. How do we not have our senses master us? Instead, we want to be a master of our senses, and how not to live a selfish life, but to be kind of able to be the master of our kind of choose our own destinies, not based on our own kind of selfishness, but on the well-being of all. these are good places for reflection for ourselves. 看时间到了，要不我们
还有
要 announcement
有吗？
我给什么？还有个短短的吗？还是你要讲那个佛七吗？
好，我还有很多故事要讲，但是没
明
时间了。
下个礼拜可以。
我们还有3-4个故事啊，就是法纪经的故事，都是很精彩的。也
继续下个礼拜继续。
也没关系，我们下个礼拜就是我们要到31那个大宴去了，那等以后有机会再讲。
So we still have more Dharmapada stories, but the time is up.
Yeah.
But we can have those stories for future sutra lectures because we want to move on to sutra lecture, vow number 31. But regardless, you can have a chance to develop our wisdom and our eloquence.
没有什么事哦。
Let's see a question here. 请问法师，什么是心？而心又代表什么？谢谢。What is the mind and what does the mind represent? I think is the question. May I later on ask one question concerning the case of a dragon caused on thus? We shouldn't think over and over again on our past deeds, only repentance and forget it. Is that right? 我们忏悔是不是应该不一直想我们做错的事情，反而我们要忏悔，然后放下。这样子对不对？ So there's 2 questions.
像这个忏悔的一个很重要的，我们不管你在哪里忏悔，在佛前忏悔，或者是跟法师前面忏悔，然后你忏悔完以后，你就已经完了，你不要再放在心上。这样子的，你再继续放心上，这样子是非常不好的，因为你这样子没完没了，这样子你会扒着你自己的心，所以你忏悔完了，你就完了，就是清净了，就是这样子。
So when you repent, maybe you want to do it before the Buddhas or for a Dharma master. When you're done, just let go of it. You don't need to hold on to it. If you keep holding on to it, then it never ends. You just keep thinking about it and dwell on it all the time, and that's a lot of suffering. So when we repent, then we just let it go. We return to purity and cultivate.
还有刚才
是什么是心？我不知道这个什么是心，我不知道你要怎么来解释。
心它是没有形象的。
No, the heart mind has no shape or form.
Yeah, 它是没有你说你心像那个六祖那时候，你把心拿出来给我看看嘛。
那个是菩提达摩跟这个第一组，
不是六祖，是二祖了。
二祖对。
二祖他是根本就拿不出来这个什么心，他没有形象的，所以你也因为这个都是在我们的心事里面而已。假如说你有形象，真的虚空中你装不下，所以这个没有。我这样子讲是太白了。所以要这个自己要用去体会出来的，这个才是真正的一个解答。
You need to investigate your own mind. The mind doesn't have any shape or form. It's not like the Bodhidharma talking to the second patriarch said, "Please take out your mind, show it to me." And the mind, Hui Ke, Good Master Hui Ke, was able to find it and so that was a teaching. But this is something for you to investigate yourself. What is the mind?
Yeah, 他是为了安心。
Do you want your heart to be peaceful? Yeah. So how about we finish the sutra lecture here because our time is up. We can do the dedication of merit. And we're in the midst of an Amitabha session, so wish everyone could keep reciting with us.
刚才那个提心的这个其实最好能够去看一看二祖达摩祖师跟那个二祖的这个他们对答的这个。
So what I recommend is you go and read on the exchange between Bodhidharma and the second patriarch, Dharma Master Hui Ke, to learn more about the mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do the dedication of merit。我们现在是在佛期当中，所以如果有人有时间，希望大家还可以跟我们一起来念佛。然后我们现在还在可以，如果人真正想要来立牌位，也可以立牌位。所以也就是我们的 berkeleymonastery.org 的网站，然后写你的名字要立牌位的就还可以。
我们只剩下明天还有一天，
对，
剩下明天嘛。
还有一天呢，就一天。Yeah, we only have one more day.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Only last day tomorrow, so you want to be vigorous. Last day tomorrow.
我们还有明天。
还有明天。
顺便讲一个还有明天的故事，好像
OK 好啊。
你有听过啊？
不知道。
怎么不知道？真的。
可以吗
？Yeah， 还有明天。Yeah， 在这个其实故事我也讲过一两次，就是说一个阎罗王啊，他就是看到大家念佛很兴盛啊，怎么阎罗王的这个人减少了？他就叫那个马面那个什么两个黑白两个那个专门抓鬼抓人的这个就是什么？
他的工作人就对了。
就是专门
就是他的人啊，他的人，阎罗王的工作人。
工作人啊。然后就是说，怎样子可以来，使这个地狱能够载人再更多呢？他就请牛头马面了，一个牛头一个马面，就问他们，你们提出看怎样子的想法，能够使地狱的人呢增多？然后牛头就讲说，现在很多人在玩这个电动玩具。或者是看这个手机，这个就跟他说，没关系，你们就尽量去玩手机，这样子，因为他们玩手机没有修行呢，他们就会以后就到地狱去。
Okay, that's quite a story. So Jing Forger made it finish it. Oh, we still have another one more day of cultivation tomorrow. So 还有一天 So one more day. So there's a story around this. Jing Forger thought of. So we'll share that as our final parting story. It says King Yama one day saw that his people in the hells were getting fewer. He said, "What's going on? How do we get more people into the hells?" So he went to two of his workers. One had a face like a horse, and the other one had a head like a cow. So he asked his worker who had a head like a cow, said, "Oh, how do we increase our numbers here?" And he says, "No problem. Look at the world right now. People are so immersed in their video games and their smartphones, they don't even remember to cultivate anymore. So by not cultivating at all, over time they're going to fall into the hells." So that's the first one.
Yeah. 然后第二个，刚才牛头嘛，然后马面就他也真的讲，现在的人啊，就是说，只要我高兴，什么都可以，只要我高兴，什么都可以。这样子的话，他们什么都可以的话，好像就去做奸犯科啊，然后邪淫啊，然后喝酒啊，什么都可以。然后这样子就给他们堕落，然后就这样子的话，最后也没有修行，也就没有念佛，然后就最后我们的这个地狱会慢慢增多。
So he's the second person, the worker with a face like a horse said, "Oh, you know, the people these days, they just do whatever makes them happy. They just enjoy their lives. They will even kill, steal, drink alcohol, or take drugs, engage in sexual activity that's kind of harmful. They just don't cultivate at all. And by not doing that, they also will just fall into the hell realms. And so we'll have more people in the hells."
所以他们两个讲了以后，阎罗王都还是不满意，都摇摇头。那最后有一个小鬼，他看到那个两个大哥都没有什么，这个阎罗王不是满意，他就想，这样子我知道，因为很多人啊，这个都修行啊，他都也会推迟说，还有明天嘛。什么事情都还有明天， 今天不要做了，就还有明天嘛，这样子就跟他说，阎罗王我知道还有明天，这个阎罗王听到，还有明天啊，那好，你就是讲这个还有明天就可以跟大家讲，还有明天就可以。
So these are the different methods for getting people to fall into the hells, I guess. So King Yama heard the first two and said, these methods aren't so good. I don't know. And so the little ghost next to the side heard his big brothers, talking, and King Yama not being so happy. He said, "Well, I have a method. All these people think that they want to cultivate, but how about we tell them there's still tomorrow. You can still cultivate tomorrow. No need to start now." And King Yama said, that's a pretty good method. Always tell them, there's still tomorrow. So that's what he used. There's still tomorrow.
Yeah.
But for us, let's not do that. We can start cultivating right now. Our spirit, as you cultivate right now, then tomorrow we'll still cultivate. So don't wait for tomorrow.
Yeah, 我们还有明天，不要忘记哦。我们还有明天。
我还有明天修行，
Yeah.
但你现在也可以修行，所以都可以一起修行。好，那我们回向功德吧。
好，我们还有明天，要记得。
Yeah. So I said, we can cultivate now. Don't have to wait. Okay. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace, with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Okay, so that concludes our sutra lecture. Wish everyone a good rest of the night. And don't wait for tomorrow. Start practicing right now. Amidofo.
Okay. 我们还有明天呢，这个是真的。
不一定哦，不一定哦。今天晚上就往生了，
往生最好，念阿弥陀佛，往生最好。OK， 阿弥陀佛，
阿弥陀佛。